Welcome to the second session as we're discussing the mind of Christ. And today we're going to look at something that flows. Last week we spoke about worldview and about how God is your view of God, your concept of God is the beginning of your worldview. In fact, a well-known Bible teacher called A.W. Tozer said, whatever comes to a man's mind when he thinks about God is the most important thing about that man. In other words, whatever comes to your mind when you think about God, that'll inevitably permeate the rest of your life, the rest of your worldview, and through that, the rest of your life, and determine how you live. So we said worldview determines how you interpret the world and interact with it. And we said the problem with our worldview is that it's like the lens of your eye. You don't see it, but you see everything else through it. And that's why it's so important that we make sure we have that right. So today, out of our sense of who God is flows our sense of who we are. I just want to read you something from this book by Timothy Keller, by Timothy Keller. It says, ancient cultures, and some traditional ones today, believed that strong individual feelings of self-interest should be suppressed in favor of fulfilling one's duty to family and tribe. In these cultures, your self-worth came from the honor bestowed on you by the community when you sublimated your desires to its welfare. Christianity put much more value on the emotions and intuitions and did not give the family and society such an absolute control over individuals. It taught that our feelings should be examined and our highest love and allegiance directed towards God. Western secularism, however, has reversed the ancient approach. Our identity now is discovered not outside in our duties and roles in society, but only inside in our desires and dreams. In this view of our self-worth comes from the dignity we bestow on ourselves as we express and fulfill our desires, regardless of what our community may say. We must be ourselves, regardless of societal expectations. Our society's main heroic narrative is that of the individual standing up and being true to him or herself over society's opposition. And that's a narrative we know all too well when we look in the movies that we watch or the TV programs. The big hero is the one who courageously stands up against all the pressure of society and is true to themselves. And what has happened was that where in the past, ancient societies were very communal. You almost didn't have an identity outside of the community. You know, I am because we are kind of approach to identity. You didn't have much freedom. You know, you were expected to take your own dreams and desires and subject them to the welfare and the needs of the community. You couldn't be saved by yourself. You were saved by being part of a community. I mean, even in the Roman Catholic Church of the Dark Ages, before the Reformation, that was true. You were seen as being saved as belonging to the church, and you didn't decide for yourself what was right and wrong. It was told to you, and also you didn't have religious freedom. You pretty much had to, you know, abide by the religion of your community, and your God, whatever the God or gods of that religion was, told you what was right and wrong, and there was no freedom of religion or freedom of expression, or very little for that matter. And in comes Christianity, and Christianity actually challenged a lot of that, surprisingly. Let's take the Reformation as an example, where we are saved by Christ, by faith alone, in Christ alone. In other words, we're no longer saved, according to the revelation that Reformers got, by belonging to a certain church or community or even ethnic group, but we are saved by our personal, individual faith in Jesus Christ. So the Christian narrative came, and the Christian gospel came and moved away from that very absolute ancient communalism in a more individualistic direction. But now along came modern secularism and took that individualism to an absolute and said, no, you know, I complete freedom. I want complete freedom from all societal bondages or societal norms. I want to find out, not from my society who I am, and not what I don't want to be what my society tells me. I want to be what I decide, what I feel, what I dream. I don't want. I want to decide. Never mind freedom of religion. I want to decide what God I want. And in fact, if there's not a God out there that I like, I want to be able to invent a God that I'm happy with. And then also, I want to decide for myself what's right and wrong, and I want to determine who I am. I don't want anyone to tell me that. And that's referred to as absolute negative freedom. Negative freedom in the sense of freedom from all constraints, as opposed to positive freedom, which is freedom to. So there are two views of freedom. One is negative freedom. I'm free from all constraints, which is problematic, because if you just think of that in an absolute term, if someone sort of is blocking me and, blocking my dreams, then why not just kill them because they are constrained? And I want to be free from all constraints. Positive freedom is much better because it's freedom to do the right thing, but also freedom. So you have ancient communalism, the one extreme, and the other extreme, you have modern individualism. And actually, the gospel and the Bible challenges both of them and finds a much better balance. Because the problem, just like there were obvious problems with the ancient communalism, the absolute ancient communalism, so there are problems with absolute modern individualism and the absolute negative freedom. Tim Keller uses a term, he says, he talks about the sovereign self. And I like that term. Individualistic modern secularism has made the self sovereign. I decide who I am. I decide what's right and wrong. I decide everything in my life. I am autonomous. I am sovereign. The self, the sovereign self. And the problem with that is, and we can see how popular it is. I mean, just think of this very popular animation that came out a while back, Frozen, about these two princes, Anna, and I can't even remember the other one's name. She discovers that Elsa, she discovers that she has this magic power to, create ice. And it causes problems, and she has to wear these gloves the whole time and hide, just be a good girl who hides constantly what she can do and who she really is. And then finally, in this dramatic scene where she marches off into the snowy mountains, she starts singing the song, Let It Go, Let It Go. And she says, I'm not going to be the good girl anymore. I'm not going to try and please other people anymore. I'm going to be myself, and I'm not going to hide who I am anymore. And modern society really resonates with that, that let it go, just be yourself. And, absolute negative freedom, being free from all constraints to be who you decide you want to be. But the problem with that, of course, is if you have no constraints. I mean, imagine living in a society where there are absolutely no constraints and everyone lived the way that they wanted to and took everything they wanted to and destroyed everything that was constraining them and holding them back, or what they felt was holding them back. That would be chaos. It would be slaughter. It would be a nightmare living in a society like that. That would not be a nice society to live in, where anyone could just come and decide that they wanted my wife or my house or my possessions or anything like that. Secondly, it's a bit naive. Second problem with this view is it's a bit naive. We know that we are much more, if we think soberly and straight about this, we are much more dependent on our society to tell us who we are. And a lot of what we learn, especially in the beginning of who we are, we learn by observing ourselves in the social mirror. And we cannot form a sense of identity by ourselves. We need other people to tell us who we are. So just saying, no, let it go, I'm not going to please other people anymore, I'm going to decide for myself, it's naive. You can't. You can't just decide for yourself. You can't form your identity without others. And then, to sort of guard against, having too much freedom, people say, the only constraint is don't cause any harm to other people. You can be free as long as you don't cause harm to others and sort of infringe on their freedom. But here's the problem. If you're going to decide what's right and wrong, what you are saying is you're deciding what causes harm to others. So each person is going to have a different definition of what causes harm. So if I am a sovereign self who decides everything for myself, I decide right and wrong, then I'm going to decide what causes harm. And I can do whatever I want to do to everyone else. And I just say, No, that's not harm according to my definition of harm. So the point is, this kind of absolute negative freedom, this kind of sovereign self approach to life, even though it's popular, it's not workable. And it's not satisfying, because the final problem with it is it undermines community. And because God, as we saw in the previous session, is a trinity, he's a tri-unity, he's a plurality of persons within a unity of God. He's a community, he's a divine community. He created us in his image for community. And there's this refrain in Genesis 1 where it says, and God said, let there be light, and let there be this and that. And every time he says, and it was good, and it was good. And he saw that it was good. And then he created man on the sixth day, and he said, and it was very good. But then in chapter 2, in the midst of all the it's good, it's very good, there's this, in chapter 2, verse 18, this little thing, and God said it's not good for man to be alone. Because man was created in the image of God for relationship like God, it's not good for man to be alone. Man needs community. And what we've found, and what more and more modern generations are finding, is that this freedom of the sovereign self, I decide what's right and wrong, I decide who I am, I decide everything about myself, undermines community. And they cannot have their bread buttered on both sides. You cannot have absolute negative freedom and satisfying community, because that absolute negative freedom, any kind of community, to be in close, intimate, real relationship and real community, you have to accept certain constraints. You have to bind yourself to other people in a way that constrains you, where you cannot just do whatever you want to. And we see this, for instance, in marriage. Now that I'm married, I cannot just go wherever I want to, whenever I want to, and be with whoever I want to, and do whatever I want to, because I've committed myself. As I say to people when I marry them, when you say I do to your spouse, you also say I don't to every other person out there. In other words, you place constraints on yourself in order to facilitate that intimacy of relationship. And intimacy of relationship is impossible without those constraints. And so we find a society that's in a bit of a hole, because on the one side we want absolute freedom, the sovereign self, but on the other side we also long for community. And that worldview that says I can choose everything for myself leaves us unsatisfied and in a hole. And what needs to happen is we need to change from the sovereign self, us at the center of our worldview and of our lives, the center of our universe, to God. Let me put it this way. I heard a story once of a ship's captain, a US ship's captain, sailing along the coast of America somewhere, and saw a light up ahead. It was alerted to a light up ahead, and he got onto the mic and said, this is Admiral Johnson from the USS St. Mary, unidentified ship, please change course. And a voice came back, this is Private Smith, please change your course immediately, you are in danger. And the Admiral said, how dare you say to me, I'm an Admiral, you're a private, change your course immediately. And the voice came back, this is Private Smith from the lighthouse on Cape Canaveral. Please change your course. And the Admiral changed his course, even though he had a higher rank. Here's the point. So for so many people, their worldview tells them they're heading at another ship and they want that ship to change course. But their worldview is wrong. And actually that ship turns out to be a lighthouse. It's not going to change course. We're going to have to change course. The way God created things, that's not going to change. Who God is not going to change. We have to change course. Think of Galileo. In his time, they thought of the earth as the center of the universe. And, unfortunately, the church of that time sort of succumbed to the science, the so-called science of a few hundred and even thousands of years, which said that the earth was the center of the universe, and agreed with the scientists. And Galileo discovered, by observing the stars and the way they move, because, many people had observed this, the stars don't move in a way that would tell you that the earth was the center of the universe. Mathematically, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up. It's wrong. And Galileo realized that the problem was that the center of the universe was not the earth, but the sun. And the earth was rotating around the sun. And as soon as he took the sun as the center of the galaxy, all of a sudden the movement of the stars made much more sense. when he spoke about the earth is rotating around the sun and around its own axis. And for so many people, they're living as though they are the center of the universe, when actually they are orbiting God as the center of the universe. But they don't know it. And they look at the stars and everything around them, they try and interpret it, they try and live according to it, but it doesn't make sense. It breaks down, it's confusing, they get hurt, they make wrong decisions, wrong life decisions, to spend time with the wrong people, to get married to the wrong people. They choose the wrong jobs for the wrong reasons. They focus on the wrong things, and they're unhappy, but they don't understand why. But it's because they've never made that paradigm shift from the earth is the center of the universe to the sun is the center of the universe. From I am the center of my universe to God is the center of my universe. And the reality is all of us as human beings tend towards this view of the sovereign self. The very first sin, when Adam and Eve were in the Garden of Eden, they ate of the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil. In other words, I don't want to trust what God says about what's right and wrong, good and evil. I want to decide for myself what's right and wrong, good and evil. And since then, all our trouble has started. All our problems have started. And God wants us to make that shift. I even read a story, an author who was writing about how to write books and how to write believable characters. And he said, the trick to writing believable characters is very simple. Write every character as though in their mind they are the center of their universe. That's how obvious it is that our human condition is the condition of the sovereign self. But we need to make that shift of center of gravity from I'm the center of my universe to God is the center of my universe. Otherwise, our universe will never make sense. And otherwise, we'll never be happy and fulfilled in ourselves by having God tell us who we really are, or in our communities because we experience community the way God designed us to. You're going to break up into your groups and discuss that. I hope you enjoy it.